So the perspective that you have comes from the seat that you are sitting in. And that is what made Undercover Boss such a really popular show. I'm Dawn Kennedy. Let's talk about that. Undercover Boss was so popular because for the first time on television, and yes, there were disguises and all kinds of things at the end, but what it did is it showed people what happens when you take the leadership making the decisions and you get the input from the people executing the decisions. And you can see where there's a mismatch or maybe where something can be improved. And most of the time in corporate America, we just don't see that happening. Now, sometimes in small businesses, it happens more often. All of the stakeholders that need to be in the room to make the decisions come with their individual perspectives, and it helps kind of paint the picture. Because if you imagine you're in the car and you're driving somewhere and you're driving, you only have the driver's perspective. But the person in the back seat who is going the same place as you, the same speed as you, in the car with you, is going to be seeing things a different way. In fact, I have a keynote on that. But the fact is that if you don't recognize that your perspective is only from your seat, it is very, very easy to not consider other people's inputs. Or the alternative is other people get too much say in the decision because they believe that just because we decide something collaboratively, it's being held collectively. And it's not. The decisions, especially in small and mid-sized businesses, typically have to be carried by a smaller number of people. It's not as diffused like across shareholders and divisions. So something to think about here, and when I was in military capabilities development, somebody might say something like, well, 20 pounds isn't that heavy. Well, when you have a truck, it's really not. But if you're walking, if you're in the infantry, it's very heavy. It definitely affects your mission readiness. And how many times do we sit down to make a decision of consequence, and either we get too many people in the room and we call them all stakeholders when that particular decision may not need them? Or how many times do we just make the decision because you feel like you obviously recognize what everybody else's perspective is because you're in it every day? Both of those can really be not such great approaches. The best approach is to figure out who exactly needs to be in that decision, who is going to carry it, and then also who gets a say and how much weight do you give it. Then when you're sitting down and you're making the decision, understanding who has to hold that decision, they're the ultimate deciders. They have to be willing to voluntarily carry that. And that is what makes this idea of the perspective you have as the seat that you sit in such a powerful way to think about decisions, even in your own family. We had a family trip a couple of years ago. There were 20 of us going on this trip, and everybody had opinions about what they wanted to do. And it was fantastic. We had so much fun. But at the end of the day, the people who were going to have to do certain things like wrangle children